Hello everyone, good evening, depending where you are. It's 6:33. It's in the central time zone, which means it's 3:33, the witching minute. In the city of dihedral angles. My name is Brian Jennings. My cat is in the frame. My cat Garfield, he hates Mondays and loves lasagna. And he's a sweet boy. This channel is dedicated to discussing the nature of reality, primarily. And that has manifested in me as a pathological relationship with the, quotes, legendary filmmaker, Quentin Tarantino. Writer-director extraordinaire. I wrote him a series of letters about playing the lead in the movie Critic, and it has descended into this hideous, ugly, evil condition, rooted in clairvoyance, rooted in the subtleties of the mind, which I excel at. And he's a powerful clairvoyant who has forged a lasting psychic connection with me, initially to give me the role, and now to destroy me, to destroy my mind. And so I'm settling into it, right? The dust has settled. Like, I see what it is now. Everything that he's done has been to make me appear insane. If he's not, no, that is outright evil, but as far as like actually murdering me, if he's not actually going to go all the way and send someone to assassinate me, then that's the play. That's the play. And I suspect that's because the people around him all expected him to talk to me after I humiliated him at a screening of Jackie Brown last year at De Niro Con. I am what could be considered infamous in show business. Now, I'm not famous, I'm infamous. What's bigger than fame is infamy. Right? You do 1,000 things right. The only thing anyone ever remembers you for are the things that you did wrong. Right? So, it's now my job to no longer be rooted in fear. At Tribeca, I was rooted in fear, my shortcomings, my psychological bullshit, like all of it. Like that's true, right? It's about being honest, it's about being open, it's about being naked and vulnerable. And so now, right, everything that he's done has been to torture me into a corner or into hanging myself. And so since that's never going to occur, I have to be above the fray. I have to be prepared to spend the rest of my life exposing the truth of this movie, right? Because it's a disgusting dumpster fire. That's like what it is, right? He sold that script, right, on April Fool's Day because it's a convoluted, right? Like, he canceled the film because of me. He didn't cancel it for any other reason. He didn't want to cancel it, right? They were making the movie. Right? I was reviewing movies in protest. That's why he canceled it. So when I didn't give him what he wanted, he found himself in a quagmire where essentially, if he forgave me, right? If he forgave me and let me play the role, then he's overtly telling all of Hollywood, "Oh, this guy's mind is stronger than mine is." That's like, and so his pride got in the way of that. And if he tacitly forgave me and just paid me to go away, then he is tacitly giving me permission to go play Hamlet in New York with his money, which he doesn't want. So, right, you cancel a movie without a real reason that you want to make, and then the guy that you thought you wanted to make it, in fact, doesn't want to meet the terms that you require in order for you to be happy making the movie. Therefore, right, he has to create this convoluted story, right? So at some point along the way between now and June, right, one of two things is going to happen, right? He's either going to say, "Oh, April Fool's gotcha. There's no, oh, see, right? Like, there's no David Fincher. Like, oh, I got you good. One last hoorah." Or, right, he's going to release it as a David Fincher film, which is equally hilarious, and just be a goblin in his sex dungeon. Right? Or the third option is that, he pays me or he murders me. But that's, like, and that's intimately tied into the first option as well. Right? That if I'm not barking at the world saying, this is your favorite foot fucking filmmaker, right, that he's a degenerate, then he has no problems and he can just release the film and not have any blowback at all. Right? And so, again, none of this had to occur. It never had to be this. Right? It never had to be this at all. All he had to do was write me a single letter in sincerity. Even after Tribeca, I could forgive all the remote viewing bullshit all the way through Tribeca, despite how frustrating it was while I was in it, and certainly how frustrating it is now that we're still in it. Because this is how he makes his movies. Right? That's like, I get that. I get that. You have this standard, right? I didn't have any clout, right? So he set up this, like, you know, initiation by fire thing, and I didn't give him what he wanted. Like, that's like, we're good, right? But for him to enter into this campaign, right, that everyone around him has known about the whole time, I wrote his agent immediately, as soon as Tribeca went south, right? These people, they all know who I am. Right? And I suspect that Tom Rothman and Stacey Sher at Sony have known about me since he canceled the film, right? He's beholden to people. He doesn't live in a vacuum, right? They were at least in pre-production, right? Or they were beginning principal photography when he canceled that film, right? He was supposed to be shooting that film last September, but the SAG strike caused it to kind of drag ass until the beginning of December, which is why we're here now, right? So I'm tired of talking about it. I know that, like, you know, what I'll say about my day is that I have a therapist. I'm processing it in a meaningful way. You know, like, I'm not, like, you know, I'm talking about it. And I know that he doesn't outright believe me, but he had me go through the whole story again. And I know that he was seeing it in a more holistic way right now, because it's all the same tactics. That's my point. You know, that's my point. That he used this facility within himself to show me, like, the way to Luciferian temporal power, right? Which I should have just done, right? But I'm glad that I didn't, because he's obviously not cool. He's not a cool guy. And then when I didn't give him what he wanted, right, he felt threatened to such an attenuated degree because he has no heart. He doesn't have the light of God inside of him. He doesn't see where his power comes from. He doesn't appreciate his family. He doesn't see what's good in his life. He only sees, right, that he revealed himself to me, who didn't give him what he wanted, right? He used the same facility to compel me to do things, right, in the same way, right, that he compels actors, right, actresses, right, Inglourious Bastards, Harvey Weinstein, right? What they got to say about it, right? To bend to his will, right? Why do you think that man lasted till 2017, right? But I know that he was appreciating the story. He was understanding it better, because it's all true. It's not all objectively provable, right? But it is objectively true. Right? If that makes any sense at all. And I know that technically it doesn't, but on a spiritual level, right? And this is, spirituality is not objective, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And that's fine. That's fine. But scientism is its own religion, right? It's its own kind of spirituality, where you say, I put all of my trust in, right? And so cognitive neuroscience and spirituality are intimately connected, right? So in that way, they're you know, it's same. They're just, like, the words are different, but the tactics are the same. Just like my point when I say that the things that they refer to with scientific terms like telepathy, telekinesis, psychokinesis, thaumaturgy, remote viewing, clairvoyance, right, are the same things that people refer to as magic and sorcery in centuries past. They're not different things, right? And this is something that my therapist pointed out, that he sees several people, you know, that he has another person that he sees who talks about witchcraft a lot. And he said that when he's with them, he has a tendency of, like, indulging them, and it just all seems kind of silly and frivolous. But when he talks to me, there's a real gravity, right? There's real, right? There is a science to the soul. It's called sacerdotal art, right? So all I can do is talk about it, right? And so, right? Yes, I am seeing a therapist. This is not something I take lightly. I didn't want to create this channel, right? But when it became clear to me, right, that his tactics have all been to overwhelm my mind, to compel me to blow my brains out, to turn all of my heroes against me, to turn the industry against me, and I could give a fuck about what some aloof studio executive thinks of me, right? But in terms of my heroes, Transtasio, David Mamet, David Berlinski, right? And I know that they can't believe him. I know that they're like, given everything that I've written to them, and I'm gonna keep writing, right? It's not over, right? This is my life, right? That's like, oh, you want to be a goblin and just like exist in my mind and have me exist in your mind? That can be okay with you. Like that's like, sure, that's fine, but it's not okay with me until everyone's in on the conversation. Right? That's fair. That's fair. Like I can't do anything about the condition. Right? There's nothing I can do about that. Right? Beyond killing myself. Like that's all that there is. Right? And even still. Right? And I would be lying. If I said, right, that my life wouldn't be easier if he was dead. Even though, right, he has, right, like his family, the people closest to him, they could still maintain this campaign against me. And I suspect that they will. Because, right, he's done so much fucked up shit to me. Right, we're in this weird loop, sort of catch-22, where he wants me to move on, right? He doesn't want me to talk about it, right? But he doesn't trust me enough in the world because of the depraved, awful shit that he's done to me to justify in his mind not watching me. So therefore, our connection will continue. So therefore, I have to keep talking about it, right? It's this vicious sort of loop. And so the critics, right, they say, oh, this is your illness, right? This is like, that's like, yes, I'm aware. I understand what clinical psychology has to say about me, but what I'm saying, right, is that if I had money to sue, right, I could subpoena Robert De Niro. I can subpoena all the cameramen at that screening of Jackie Brown. I can subpoena the director of the Tribeca Film Festival and say, was I not in the front row? Right? He's destroyed the footage. He's obvious that he's like made them destroy it. Right? Just like he sought to destroy me, right? That he has, like, there's no middle ground. There's no middle ground. He's a selfish, arrogant ass. So, I have to talk about it. I'm going to be making my first video for my other channel at Celestial Survey, dedicated more specifically to writing, where I'm going to be reading aloud Thomas Pynchon's Shadow Ticket. And then I'm going to talk about each chapter. So each video will be a chapter within the book. And then I'll talk about, right, I've written some things about it. And that can be a new thing that's not like solely dedicated to, right, discussing the real story of the movie Critic. Eventually, we're all drawn to the shore, right? It's the shore of our own ignorance, the ocean of consciousness. And it's an infinite fractal, an infinite wellspring of misery as well as inspiration, right? I can remember when I was hanging out at Fish, right? I was hanging out with these people. They were really cool. I was like playing guitar and we were like smoking weed and just like hanging out and like having a good time. And they were from Philly. I remember that. They kept saying John's. But the girl, she said, "Oh, what do you think the DMT elves are?" And I thought of it immediately. I said, "Oh, it's a psychological prison." And they both got like, they were like kind of taken aback. I said, whoa, like, no, dude, no, that's not, no. And they didn't really understand what I was saying, right? And so what I'm saying is that like all of those entities, right, that you see in your mind, right, hearken to some psychological thing within you, right? That's the point, right? It's not a prison necessarily, but it's a window into, it's a visual manifestation of some window into your psyche, and I think that is true. I'm almost certain of it, in fact, right? And so, right, it's that shore. It's glimpsing a specific waveform on the shore, right? That's right. And so the more of the ocean that you're able to perceive, right, and understand, right, the wider the frame gets, the denser your mind gets, the clearer the resolution gets, right, the broader the depth of your ignorance will always be. That there's always this line, you can't ever like circumvent it, right? People come to spiritual understandings, people come to recognitions of conscious awareness, right, through a myriad of ways. Some people only see it on their deathbeds and through near-death experiences, psychedelic inspiration, right, years of torture and misery, right? Extreme discipline, right? All of these things can all liberate your mind out of the shackles of Maya, of the illusion, right? That what we see, right, is a fractal shadow of its idealized form, right? That all things reside as idea and are corrupted through motion into a kinetic shadow of that idea. And so this is the source of all life, right? And I've discussed it many times on this channel. And so all clairvoyants hearken to that same facility as well. It's the recognition that mind permeates all of space, right? That consciousness is a field that operates on all stratas, all convocations simultaneously. And through the discipline of the adept, through the study, right? And the awareness, the calmness, the meditation of the adept, of the student, right? The conscious awareness of the individual, right, can quantum entangle, right, the atomic structure of the electrical condition of their body, of their brain, of their conscious field, right, with a disparate locale or a person, right? And so oftentimes it's more like a radio wave, it's more like a radio signal. Each time we have a thought in our minds, it's not merely the abstract idea, it's also an electrical condition engendered by the physical structure of the brain. This is what's occurring, right? You have a thought. Where does the thought come from? Oh gosh, no one knows, right? The thoughts are non-local, right? But the condition of having the thought engenders a physical condition within the brain, a novel neuronal firing, synaptic firing, which engenders a membrane of an electric field. And so if your intention is purely to play guitar, right, then that electric field, right, goes through the arms and comes out the fingers, and the music radiates out. That's the discharge. The discharge is through the instrument, primarily. And so, right, that's what a clairvoyant is doing as well, right? That they're saying, oh, well, mind is anywhere, right? They don't need rigorous, like, scientific proving of clairvoyance, right? They recognize that psychic phenomenon is a latent bandwidth within man, within all of creation, right? It's the recognition that mind is everywhere. And so the clairvoyant says, oh, I want to see, right? I want to see your thoughts. I want to see what someone else is doing, right? And so this is the difference between true clairvoyance and cold reading, right? That when you call Miss Cleo, right, or when you go into the psychic shop, right, say you go into a psychic shop and you pay them, $100 or whatever, and you say, okay, tell me something good, right? That what they're doing 99% of the time is they're relaying the information that you express through your physical, right, your physicality, your facial features, your eyes, at the speed of light into their mind, right, and offering a cold interpretation of what that represents spiritually and psychologically, right? That's what's actually happened, probably 95% of the time. But the other 5% is pure spiritual rhapsody, right? And so this is the secret to remote viewing. This is what's actually occurring with remote viewing, that you are harmonizing the two conditions atomically, molecularly, like physically, right, metaphysically, right, to such an attenuated degree that through your meditative introspection, right, you're allowed to actually see what is occurring at the other place, or what the other person is actually doing. And so this can go the other way as well, right? That it's not a one-way street. You can go out, right, like a radio signal, and then, right, one of the truest expressions of spiritual revelation is when you collapse that electrical waveform back to center, right, which is the pineal gland at the geometric center of the brain. And so this is what occurred with me when I had my spiritual awakening in 2018. And so that was, 7 years ago now, almost 7 years ago to the day. And I was partying, like, I was like having a good time, like hanging out with people. And it just got to be like real overbearing, you know. So I like went outside and I got in my truck, and it was really dark. I was in Boulder, Colorado, and I closed the door, and it was pitch black, you know. I had been meditating every day for about 3 years by that point. You know, every day, as long as I could. I didn't expect anything out of it. I just said, "Oh, I want to be still, and I want to be close. I want to be close to the source, you know, as best as I can." And as soon as I closed my eyes, right, like I wasn't able to like articulate it in such a sophisticated way as I can now, but that's what actually occurred, right, where I collapsed the actual membrane of the electrical condition engendered by my thoughts, right, and involuted it, right, to where it inverted, right, and went inside out back into the conscious field that permeates all of space, back to its original source code condition. And it was overbearing. It was, you know, what can you say, you know, when you glimpse the heavens, when the eye of God opens before you, you know? And it was all just like, you know, but again, it was hearkening to something within me, because I was getting into geometry in a palpable way as well, you know, that we all shape the eternity that we seek to see within ourselves, right? So, right? A part can never know the whole, but you can be a good part. Through study, through patience, through discipline. And so, I was supposed to be a movie star. Right? I was supposed to be Quentin Tarantino's last movie star. Right? I let my fear get in the way. I let my humanity get in the way. Right? Instead of trusting the divinity within me, you know, trusting the light that he was shining towards me in his perverse way, you know. I acknowledge that. I always have. And so, once you have unlocked this facility within yourself, right, there's a myriad of things that you can do. On the most fundamental level, which is how I behaved for a long time thereafter, I sought to amplify it within myself, right? And so it lingered for a long time. That was the first time I ever like saw a painting in my mind, and my sculpture that's mentioned in my novel, the 4 reptilians, and all these things. It was all windows into, right, the psychic divinity that shapes all of reality, right? But you can also push it out into creation, right, through good works, as well as through healing the sick, right? That this is that's that same facility that I'm talking about now is the same way that nuns heal the sick. That's right, and these are documented cases. I'm not talking about like frou-frou medieval, like, no, 20th century, right, documented history. Right? And if anyone's interested in these phenomenon, I invite you to look up Michael Talbot's The Holographic Universe. It's a masterclass, a wonderful introduction to the notion of the mind, of what the mind is, what consciousness is. Right? And so that's the one school. Right? And the other school that I find myself in now, right, which on a fundamental level I engendered by being a coward. Right? But I didn't, because he's decided to use this facility, that you can also use this facility to seek the destruction of someone, which is always far easier. With the engendering of motion comes in tandem with it, though maybe a little behind, entropy. Right? All things that move must eventually stop moving. Right? And so as soon as something comes into the world manifested, right, it's barreling towards death. That's how it always works. And so when you have, right, when you have this desire, say, oh, I want to see someone suffer, someone die, right? That all you're doing is just pushing them a little faster along the way, right? And so therefore it's a lot easier, and of course it's the pinnacle of evil, and I can see it. This furrow, this worry line right here, right? That's new. That's like within the last 6 months because of his treatment of me, and again, I'd like to think that I'm wearing it well, and I know that if I cut my hair, I would look a lot younger too. But I can't cut it now because I'm acting in 12th Night. So, these are the stakes. I didn't appreciate it then, but I do appreciate it now. And I've been trying to come clean for the better part of a year now. And so my point is that to all of my naysayers, right, to all of the people who say, oh, he's not well, Quentin's a famous guy, right, why don't you do anything to actually prove me delusional? That's a better question, right? Like, yes, I could sue him. I could. I have no money, right? And this isn't about money, right? If I sued him, would he pay me? 100%. 100%. No trial. What, he wants a court stenographer recording me talking cash shit? Right? Me talking about him spraying chicken blood all over his hot wife while he's fucking her? Right? So the things that people refer to as psychic and clairvoyant, remote viewing, are the same things that people refer to as magic and sorcery. That's my point about the blood joke, right? Right? And they didn't understand scientifically what they were doing, but what they were doing was engendering a hormonal spike, right, which engendered a novel neuronal synaptic firing in their brains, which engendered a novel electric membrane of an electric field, which they pushed out into creation to suit the scope of their intent and their desire. So, I have to talk about it. I have to keep writing about it. I have to keep mailing everyone about it. Not, right, like I gain nothing. I gain nothing in the telling. Right? All that I gain is peace of mind, that everyone understands the nature of our relationship. And there's always going to be a faction that doesn't in fact believe me, and he can, right, and this is my point, right, that I can tell the truth and he can lie, right? So he's set us up like, that's where it's like a celestial stalemate, where he's like, no, I'm never acknowledging you. Right? And so it's my point is that it's obvious that he has slandered me to the people that I wrote, right, about helping us reconcile. And so, right, that's what he wants. Like he wants to lie about me. He wants to say that I'm insane, that I'm not well, that I'm a crazed fan. And so that's not true. It's categorically not true. Right? So I have to write everyone about it forever, right? That's like, and it won't take me forever, right? All I gotta do is write one letter, print out 200 copies, and send it to every voting member of the Academy that I could think of, right? Everyone in the DGA, everyone in the WGA, right? And that would likely be enough. But it's tough when you have no money, of course. But that's my plan, that's my goal, right? And so he finds himself between a rock and a hard place with this regard, because if he goes out of his way to say things about me, to say, oh, this guy's gonna write, right? Like he proves me right if he speaks to them before my letter arrives. Right? Knowing that I have no real following on here. These videos don't get a lot of views, right? That he's, right? Like how does he know that I was gonna write them if he's not watching me, if he's not hovering over me? Right? So it's his right to lie. It's his right to deny me. Just like it was my right to deny the light in myself at Tribeca. I spent all of this time, all the way up until February or so, hating myself, all the way through Sundance. And then when it became obvious that he's just been lying to me egregiously, through him telling me, not through me like looking it up, when I started remote viewing in a palpable, practical way, then it became, then I said, we have to come clean. We have to, right? I've been trying to come clean ever since. And so he's got a chokehold on the press, right? That anytime anyone reaches out to him, he just tells them that I'm insane. Again, it's all about right? Everything that he did was to make me seem insane, and he succeeded in some way. And I know that no one around him actually believes him, right? But it's upsetting, when I think about the United Way, like that I've done nothing but try to move on with my life, right? And I'm allowed to talk about it, right? I'm allowed to bring the whole world in on the joke, right? Joke's on me, joke's on you. That's like you're good. I get it. Right? No forgiveness, no trust, right? And so he can always lie. He can that's what I'm saying. Right? That he can always lie about everything. Like that's fine, right? But he can't lie about Tribeca. And so, right, we're gonna talk about it. I suppose I'll go. I only have a few minutes left. See what's good in your life. Be devoted to good things. Write a poem to someone you love. Know that life is not an accident. All instances of clairvoyance are the same conditions in terms of the electrical condition in your brain that people refer to as magic and sorcery. They're not similar things. The words are different, the tactics are the same. It's the recognition that mind is the progenitor and perpetuator of all life. And by tapping your individual consciousness into the conscious field that permeates all of space, you can find anyone, lift them up to soar with the angels, right? Or destroy them and send them to hell. God bless. Right? Heaven is a psychological condition. Hell is a psychological condition. That's the point, right? It's not a real place. God bless. Let me know what you think.